started moving around a little more. Performance was the means through which I felt embodied. I was such a divided self for a very long time that found safety in thinking and being cerebral and kind of cutting myself off from the world of emotions. And through music, it was like I found the bottom half of myself. I think of sort of my desire for connection, which I always aim for through performance, because it doesn't require language, and in terms of it's not about discourse. It's in the world of sound, but I kind of think of myself as like this in a room, often like this headless person that's carrying their head on a platter with a smile on it, and I'm just walking around like, oh yeah, here's my head, and I'm smiling, and that's very disturbing. What music did was it put that head back on my body, even if it wasn't smiling, and that's big.
So it connected, it created a coherent Carrie.
So that was my persona, was that, or that's what I found. And I think part of that was persona, but part of that was me moving towards who I really am or who I want to be.
Right. So you talk a lot about seeing examples when you came across these various bands in the Northwest, some of whom I think might be present. Seeing them on stage gave you an example of who you could be or who you wanted to be. And then you seem to have found that pretty quickly. So what confuses me about this whole thing, this persona conversation, is I don't quite understand, and I've thought about this when it comes to Beyonce also. She's one of the few people out there doing stuff in the world that I know about. And she also has a persona. And there's all this discussion about this, like, putting on this cloak of somebody else that allows you to perform the way you want to perform, but that person isn't you. But to me, it seems like it is you. It's just a piece of you, a part of you that you kind of control in the rest of your life, right? And it's an angrier you. You put your head on top of your body, but you weren't smiling. You were expressing a lot of the dissatisfaction and frustration and hurt and anger that you weren't able to express otherwise, right?
I love this interview. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So
therapy sessions.
I have like a really nice thread here that I'm not able to follow, but basically what I want to know is, it seems like in the beginning there was this great disparity between how you behaved off stage and how you behaved on stage. And the on stage version of you was really necessary. And I kind of want to connect it to your mom. Part of the family drama is that Carrie's mom suffered from anorexia, right? And you write about when she's sort of literally disappearing. And it seems like around that time you started having a real need to be noticed as your mom became more and more unnoticeable. You had a stronger desire to exist and be noticed. And so then there you are, like, cut to 10 years later, on stage, screaming and raging. And so you're really, really, really noticeable. But off stage, you're not really able to express that as much, right? Then,
yeah.
Right. So what I want to know is, now, how old are you now?
I'm 41.
41. After a 9-year hiatus from the band and from that outlet of performing in that way, that gulf between the two versions of you on stage and off stage, how has it changed since then? Have you found a way to be more expressive of the full dynamic, nuanced Carrie, both on stage and off?
Yes. I think for so many years, I felt like what we were projecting out was a fist. It was about pushing away and pushing through and boring a hole into something and carving out and, and it was a claw. And I think when we came back through the 9 years, through Portlandia, through just my own growth, it was the same gesture, but my hand was open. And that ability to let people in is how I operate in my real life. So and it also made touring easier, because there was not this disconnect between being on stage and pushing against something. It was being on stage and acquiescing, giving into something. And I think that's how I try to move through life. So there's much less of a disconnect, and I think it's why I'm happier and healthier now, and that Sleater-Kinney doesn't feel, like this kind of weight or a force that's kind of propelling me, but that I'm not able to control. And also, I love doing Portlandia or Transparent or many other things that kind of allow for a levity or a way of dissecting and thinking about the world that involves absurdism, which is, to me, some of the ways that a lot of my early experiences coalesce now. The only way to make sense of them, the only way to make sense of some of the strangeness, even the violence, some of the things that we witness and hear about, is to think of it through art or absurdity or that intersection. So I think I have other mediums with which to kind of process that, and it really has cohered for me in a more holistic way.
Yeah, and you talk about the scene in the 90s, the Riot Girl scene? Can I just call it that? Yeah. Blanketly? Okay. As being sort of a little elitist and exclusionary and maybe taking itself too serious. I don't want to put words in it. But will you talk about that for a second?
Sure. It's there was so much that I learned and was inspired by in Olympia and scenes akin to Olympia in terms of fairly radical politics, definitely, a marriage of feminism and music, and was sort of the way that I, learned about politics was through that lens. And I think there was also this juxtaposition where something I think that we assumed felt very inclusive had a lot of exclusivity to it. I think some people felt alienated by not quite, or by either feeling left out because they didn't see themselves represented in it, based on ethnicity or class or just even regionalism, or I think even people within the community, including myself, sometimes just felt flummoxed by what seemed like an ever-moving kind of goalpost, or that there were some contradictions within sort of these rules, and also a sense that we couldn't maybe strive for things that we wanted to without a sense of sort of betrayal. That if we had desires that existed kind of outside the insularity, that we needed to protect in order to kind of, I think, create like this really vibrant scene. I think the insularity really nurtured and made things very galvanic, but to kind of want something a little more than that, or just even feel alienated from it, even sort of that act felt a little bit scary, I think, because it just, it was there was a strident nature to it that I think was necessary, and I think that kind of strident and dogmatic nature is sometimes necessary in early forms of something, because it's, you have to put a line in the sand, that didn't exist before, and later you figure it out and you're like, actually it's more nuanced, we really meant this, but at the time, it felt very crucial. It felt, not like life or death, but it felt scary, and it felt scary to say certain things, and then I think a lot of people felt like later when we tried to kind of finesse things or open it up, that people were, there's just a clumsiness, I think, to early forms of something, but I'm so grateful for it, in every way.
And did it feel like you were sort of betraying this home that had given you yourself when you needed to break away from it, to break some of the rules, maybe?
I think there was a conversation which I've had with people in this room and with other friends that were in Olympia at the time, was this idea of ambition and wanting people outside of our communities and like-minded communities to hear what we were doing. I mean, we had goals, we had things we wanted to say, you know, and ambition felt anathema to, or that it was immediately kind of tied with materialism or commercialism, that there, you know, it was a very dirty word to kind of go for something. Right. And I think even now people associate ambition with this very negative thing, and there's always sort of a sexist undertone in terms of female ambition, as if it always means this kind of like neoliberalism, like leaning in, capitalist thing, that it doesn't mean like, well, you can be ambitious through compassion, you can be ambitious and be community oriented. I mean, it doesn't have to be strictly associated with something, you know, that is just about the brass ring.
Right. I watched a video of a concert from the last tour in DC. At room 930 or something. But everybody knows what that is.
How much do we love Gaby?
I can't even remember the name of the venue here in New York City where I grew up, where I saw the show.
Terminal 5.
Terminal 5. Anyway, so I was watching this video today of you guys playing 9 years after the this tour from 2015, and you and Corin you're smiling at each other a lot in the first few songs, and I was really excited to see that. I actually don't know what it looked like when you were performing 15 years ago and stuff, but I imagine there wasn't a lot of like open-handed vulnerability that was being expressed.
You know, I mean, it's hard. I feel like Corin and Janet and I have always had, intermittently, a lot of fun playing together, but I think we have more enjoyment now. There's an awareness of the flimsiness of it, you know, that not everything lasts. We don't really take it for granted, so there certainly is an appreciation of each night. So yeah, there was a lot of smiling. You know what's weird? Like, I like smiling. Seems weird to say I don't like smiling. But then when you see a picture of yourself on stage with a guitar and you're smiling, you're like, don't smile on stage. Like, you gotta look serious. But I can't help it.
Well, I thought it looked really cool to see you smiling, because I was thinking of just what you had just been saying, like, oh, maybe, I mean, I know you, so I'm also projecting what I know of you onto this, but thinking also like, oh, maybe this is a more nuanced experience of playing this music. Like, it's still incredible music, but it maybe doesn't have to follow. I know you were breaking all kinds of rules back then and shit like that, but now that the three of you are adults and you've left the band and Portlandia and a million other things have happened for you and them, I imagine, that you can come back to it with a little bit more openness, right? A little bit less of this strident, rule-following, do-or-die attitude, and that just seems like so exciting now that it's given you your footing as a woman, which it seemed to do. You can keep evolving because you've sort of broken it open a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of letting go on stage. I mean, I still like to perform, I think, with a sense of danger and risk, and not to harm myself or to harm anyone else, or to, you know, necessarily, but at the same time, I like a feeling of leaving it all on stage and feeling like it's a moment that is sanctioned to go to places that are dark, to go to places of uncertainty. And, you know, there's very little allowance in our regular pedestrian lives to get to a place that emulates madness or emulates ecstasy. You know, a stage is, there's an allowance for that, there's a privilege for that, and I will push to that place every night if I can. But I think that there is a safety now in knowing that I will come back from that. And that's a difference, and that's a freedom. I feel like I can go further because there's elasticity, there's something that will pull me back. And I guess ironically that allows me to go past, yeah.
I just got the head nod.
Okay.
Which